The pool was silent, save for the faint ripple of water against the tiles, but my heart thundered like a storm. I stood frozen on the deck, chlorine stinging my eyes, as Coach Riley's shadow loomed closer. What she did next would unravel everything I thought I knew about myself. My name is Harper Kane, a 19-year-old freshman at Coastal State University in California, clawing my way through the swim team tryouts with dreams of a scholarship. I wasn't the fastest, but I had grit. Years of waking up at 4 a.m. to train in icy community pools back in Ohio had carved that into me. Coastal State was my shot at something bigger, a chance to escape the suffocating small-town whispers about girls like me who didn't quite fit the mold. I'd always known I was different, but I buried it deep, under layers of lap times and relay splits. Until Riley. Coach Riley Morgan, 28, was a legend in her own right. A former All-American swimmer who'd nearly made the Olympics before a shoulder injury ended her career. She was tough, all sharp edges and no nonsense, with hazel eyes that could pin you in place like a butterfly under glass. The team both feared and adored her. I was no exception, though my reasons were complicated. Every barked order, every critique of my stroke, felt personal, like she saw through the armor I'd built. And tonight, after a grueling 2-hour practice, she'd asked me to stay behind. "Harper, your backstroke is sloppy," she'd said earlier, her voice cutting through the chatter of the locker room. "Stay after. We're fixing it." The other girls exchanged glances, but I just nodded, my stomach twisting. Now the pool deck was empty, the sky bruising purple above the Pacific. It was just us. "Get in," Riley said, tossing me a kickboard. Her tone was clipped, but there was something else there. Something softer, like she was holding back. I slid into the water, the cold biting my skin, and started the drill she'd outlined. 50 meters, focus on form. My arms burned, my lungs screamed, but I pushed through, hyper-aware of her pacing the deck, her sneakers squeaking faintly. "Better," she called out after my third lap, crouching by the pool's edge. "But you're still dropping your hips. Come here." I swam to her, gripping the wall, my breath ragged. She knelt closer, her face inches from mine, and pointed at my torso. "Engage here," she said, her hand hovering over the water, outlining the air above my waist. "You're sinking because you're not trusting your core." I nodded, trying to focus on her words, but her proximity was dizzying. The way her jaw tightened, the way her eyes flicked to mine and held. Too long, too intense. "Try again," she said, standing abruptly, like she'd caught herself. I pushed off the wall, my mind racing. Was I imagining it? The way her voice softened when she said my name? The way her gaze lingered? By the time I finished, the stars were out, and my muscles ached like I'd swum the English Channel. Riley was sitting on the bench now, her elbows on her knees, staring at the water like it held secrets. "You're good, Harper," she said as I climbed out, dripping and shivering. "Really good. But you're holding back. Why?" I froze, towel clutched to my chest. "I'm not," I lied, but my voice cracked. Nobody had ever asked me that, not my parents, not my high school coaches, not even myself. Riley's eyes met mine, and for a moment I swore she saw everything. The fear, the longing, the parts of me I'd locked away. "You are," she said quietly, standing. "And it's not just your swimming." She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the faint cedar of her shampoo. My pulse hammered. Then, without warning, she reached out, her fingers brushing my wrist. Just a graze, but it felt like lightning. "You don't have to hide here," she whispered. I wanted to ask what she meant, to demand answers, but my throat closed up. Her touch lingered, a question hanging in the air. Then she pulled back, her face unreadable, and walked toward the locker room. "See you tomorrow, Kane," she called over her shoulder, leaving me alone with the echo of her words and the weight of what hadn't been said. That night I lay awake in my dorm, replaying every second. Riley's touch, her words, they were a spark, and I was kindling, waiting to catch fire. I didn't know what scared me more. The possibility that she felt something too, or that I'd misread it entirely. But one thing was clear. I wasn't the same Harper who'd walked onto that pool deck. Not anymore. The next morning, practice was brutal. Riley was back to her usual self, all business, barking orders at the team. But every time her eyes met mine, there was a flicker, something that made my skin prickle. I swam harder, desperate to prove myself, but also to drown out the questions swirling in my head. Did she mean it? Was it a mistake? And why did I want so badly for it to be real? By the end of the week, the tension was unbearable. I was distracted, missing starts, clipping lanes. My teammate Mia, a junior with a sharp tongue, noticed. "What's up with you, Kane? You're swimming like you forgot how." I brushed her off, but she wasn't wrong. Riley was under my skin, and I didn't know how to get her out, or if I even wanted to. Friday's practice ended late, and once again Riley asked me to stay. This time the air felt heavier, like a storm about to break. "You're still holding back," she said, her voice low as we stood by the pool. "Talk to me, Harper. What's going on?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. How could I tell her? That I'd spent my whole life hiding who I was, terrified of what it meant? That her touch had cracked something open inside me, and I didn't know how to close it again? Instead, I shook my head, my eyes burning. "I can't," I whispered. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. "You don't have to do this alone," she said, and there it was again, that softness, that pull. She stepped closer, and this time she didn't stop herself. Her hand found mine, her fingers threading through my own, and the world tilted. "Harper," she said, her voice barely audible. "I see you." Those 3 words, "I see you," hung in the air like a lifeline I was too scared to grab. Riley's hand in mine felt like the only real thing in the world, but it also terrified me. I pulled away, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break my ribs. I have to go," I stammered, grabbing my towel and practically sprinting to the locker room. I didn't look back, couldn't bear to see her face. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I shoved my gear into my bag, my hands shaking. What was I doing? Riley was my coach. She was 9 years older, a professional, someone I was supposed to respect, not feel this for. But the truth was clawing its way out, and I couldn't stop it. I wanted her to see me. I wanted her to keep seeing me. Back in my dorm, I avoided my roommate's questions and buried myself in my phone, scrolling through nothing to avoid thinking. But Riley's face kept flashing in my mind, her steady gaze, the way her voice softened when she said my name. I'd spent so long hiding, pretending I was just like everyone else, that I didn't know how to let someone in. Growing up in Ohio, I'd heard the slurs, seen the looks. I'd learned to keep my head down, to channel everything into swimming. But Riley was different. She wasn't just looking at my times or my form. She was looking at me. The next few practices were torture. Riley didn't single me out again, didn't ask me to stay late, but her presence was everywhere. A glance during warm-ups, a nod when I nailed a turn. Each one felt like a spark, and I was burning up inside. My teammates noticed my distraction. Mia cornered me in the locker room one day, her arms crossed. "Spill it, Harper. You're a mess." "Is it Riley?" My stomach dropped. "What?" "No," I said too quickly, my face heating up. Mia raised an eyebrow but didn't push. Still, her words stuck with me. Was it that obvious? Did everyone see it? I started avoiding Riley's gaze, focusing on the water, on the rhythm of my strokes. But it was no use. Every time she called my name, my heart stuttered. By the end of the second week, I was a wreck, missing splits, fumbling drills. My scholarship dreams felt like they were slipping away. And worse, I was losing my grip on myself. Then came the team bonding night. Coach Riley had organized a bonfire at the beach, a rare break from our grueling schedule. The team sprawled across the sand, laughing over esmores and bad pop music blasting from someone's speaker. I sat on a driftwood log, nursing a soda, trying to blend in. Riley was across the fire, her face glowing in the flickering light, talking to another coach. She looked relaxed, her laugh carrying over the crash of waves, and I couldn't stop watching her. "Earth to Harper," Mia said, plopping down beside me. "You're staring." I flinched, but she just smirked. "Chill, I'm not judging. Just be careful, okay? Riley's intense and you're like a baby gay." "I'm not," I started, but Mia's look shut me up. She wasn't wrong, and that scared me more than anything. I'd never said it out loud, never let myself think it. But the word fit like a key turning in a lock. Later, as the fire died down, Riley walked over, her hands in her pockets. "You okay, Kane?" she asked, her voice low enough that only I could hear. The others were distracted, packing up coolers and blankets. Yeah, I lied, staring at the sand. My throat felt tight like I was drowning on dry land. She sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders brushed, and the warmth of her sent a shiver through me. You've been off, she said, not accusing, just stating a fact. Talk to me. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But the words wouldn't come. Instead I blurted, why do you care so much? It came out sharper than I meant, and I saw her flinch just for a second. Because I see something in you, she said, her voice steady but raw. Not just as a swimmer, as a person. And I think you're scared to let that person out. Her words hit like a punch. I stood, my hands clenched, and walked toward the water, needing space, needing air. The ocean stretched out, vast and dark, and I felt so small against it. Riley followed, stopping a few feet behind me. Harper, she said, and the way she said my name broke something in me. I turned, tears stinging my eyes. What do you want from me? I whispered. I'm trying so hard to be enough. For the team, for you, for myself. But I don't know how. She stepped closer, her eyes searching mine. You're already enough, she said softly. You just have to believe it. For a moment we just stood there, the waves crashing, the world holding its breath. Then she reached out, her hand cupping my cheek, her thumb brushing away a tear I hadn't realized I'd shed. The touch was gentle, but it burned through me, and I leaned into it, my heart racing. I thought she might kiss me, and I wanted her to, more than I'd ever wanted anything. But she didn't. She dropped her hand, her expression torn, and stepped back. I'm sorry, she said, her voice breaking. I shouldn't have. She turned and walked away, leaving me standing in the sand, my heart in pieces. The bonfire's embers were cold by the time I got back to my dorm, but my skin still burned where Riley's hand had touched me. I didn't sleep that night, replaying her words, her hesitation, the way she'd walked away. I was drowning in questions. What did she want? What did I want? The next morning, practice was a blur. Riley was all business, her whistle sharp, her instructions clipped. She didn't look at me, not once, and it felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I swam like I was chasing something I'd never catch, pushing my body to the limit until my arms trembled and my lungs burned. Mia noticed, of course. You look like you're trying to outswim a shark, she said as we toweled off. What's going on? Nothing, I snapped, but my voice was shaky. She didn't push, just gave me a long look before heading to the showers. I lingered by the pool, hoping Riley would say something, anything. But she was already gone, her office door closed. The rest of the week was the same. Riley keeping her distance, me spiraling. I started doubting everything. Had I imagined the connection? Was I just a confused kid misreading her kindness? But then I'd remember her touch, the way her eyes softened, and I knew it wasn't all in my head. Something was there, but it was tangled in rules and roles we weren't supposed to cross. By Friday I couldn't take it anymore. After practice I waited until the locker room cleared, then knocked on Riley's office door. My heart was in my throat, but I was done running. Come in, she called, her voice neutral. She was at her desk, surrounded by clipboards and training schedules, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked tired, shadows under her eyes, and for a moment, I wondered if she'd been as restless as me. Harper, she said, setting down her pen. What's up? I closed the door behind me, my hands trembling. We need to talk, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. About the beach. About us. Her face tightened and she stood, crossing her arms. There's no us, Harper, she said, but her voice wavered. I'm your coach. That's it. Then why did you touch me? I asked, stepping closer. Why did you say those things? You can't just do that and then act like it didn't happen. She looked away, her jaw clenched. I made a mistake, she said quietly. I crossed a line. I'm sorry. Her words felt like a slap. A mistake. I echoed, my voice rising. That's what you're calling it? Because it didn't feel like a mistake to me. Harper, you don't understand, she said, her eyes meeting mine, raw and conflicted. I'm your coach. There are rules, boundaries. I could lose my job, my reputation. And you're just starting out. I can't let you get caught up in this. I'm not a kid, I shot back. I know what I feel. And I know you feel it too. The words were out before I could stop them, hanging in the air like a challenge. She stared at me, her breath uneven. You're right, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I do feel it. But that doesn't make it okay. My heart surged even as her words stung. She felt it. She felt it. But before I could say anything, she stepped around the desk, putting distance between us. You need to go, she said, her voice breaking. Please. I wanted to argue, to fight, but the look in her eyes stopped me. She wasn't just scared, she was torn apart. I left without another word, the door clicking shut behind me like a full stop. The next few weeks were a haze. I threw myself into training, channeling everything into my strokes, my kicks, my times. I was faster, sharper, but it wasn't enough to quiet the ache in my chest. Riley kept her distance, her feedback strictly professional, but I caught her watching me sometimes, her expression unreadable. Then came the first meet of the season. The stands were packed, the air thick with chlorine and anticipation. I was in the 200-meter backstroke, my best event, and I was determined to prove myself. Riley was on the sidelines, her clipboard in hand, her eyes locked on the pool. When my race came, I dove in, the world narrowing to the water, the rhythm of my breath. I swam like my life depended on it, and when I touched the wall, the scoreboard lit up. First place, a personal best. The team erupted, but it was Riley's face I sought out. She was smiling, a real smile, and for a moment, it felt like we were back on that beach, just the two of us. Good job, Kane, she said as I climbed out, her voice warm but guarded. Keep it up. That night I couldn't sleep. The high of the win was fading, replaced by the same gnawing question. What now? Riley had admitted she felt something, but she'd also made it clear nothing could happen. I was caught between wanting to respect her boundaries and wanting to fight for whatever this was. For the first time, I let myself admit it. I was falling for her, and it was tearing me apart. Winning that race should have felt like a triumph, but it was hollow without Riley's warmth to anchor it. I'd swum my heart out, but all I could think about was her smile, guarded, distant, like she was holding herself back from me. I was tired of the push and pull, tired of pretending I could keep my feelings locked away. The next morning I skipped breakfast and headed to the pool early, needing the water to clear my head. The campus was quiet, the dawn light casting long shadows across the deck. I was halfway through my warm-up laps when I heard footsteps. Riley. She stood at the edge, her arms crossed, watching me with that unreadable look she'd mastered. You're early, she said, her voice neutral but laced with something softer. Couldn't sleep. I climbed out, water dripping onto the tiles, and faced her. Not really, I admitted, my voice raw. You. She hesitated, then shook her head. Not much. There was a beat of silence, heavy with everything we weren't saying. I wanted to scream, to demand she stop hiding, but instead I took a deep breath. Riley, I can't keep doing this, I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. I know you're my coach. I know there are rules, but I can't pretend I don't feel this. And I don't think you can either. Her eyes widened, and for a moment I thought she'd shut me down again. But then she sighed, her shoulders slumping. Harper, you have no idea how hard this is, she said, her voice breaking. Every time I look at you, She stopped, running a hand through her hair. I'm supposed to be the responsible one. I'm supposed to protect you, not complicate things. Then why does it feel like you're the one I need protecting from? I asked, stepping closer. Not because you're hurting me, but because I can't stop wanting you. Her breath hitched, and I saw the crack in her armor, the way her eyes softened, the way her hands twitched like she wanted to reach out. Harper, she whispered. This could ruin everything. For both of us. I don't care, I said, and I meant it. I've spent my whole life playing it safe, hiding who I am. I'm done. If this ruins me, at least I'll know I was honest for once. For a moment she just stared at me, her eyes searching mine. Then slowly she closed the distance between us. Her hand found mine, her fingers lacing through my own, and this time she didn't pull away. You're braver than I am, she murmured, her thumb brushing over my knuckles. I don't know how to do this. Then we'll figure it out, I said, my voice trembling but sure. Together. She leaned in, her forehead resting against mine, and for the first time I felt like I could breathe. The world didn't disappear. It was still there with all its rules and risks, but in that moment it was just us standing by the pool, holding on to each other. But it didn't last. The sound of a door slamming echoed across the deck, and we sprang apart. It was Mia, her eyes wide as she froze in the doorway. "Oh," she said, her voice small. "I didn't see anything." She turned and bolted, leaving us in stunned silence. "Shit," Riley muttered, her face pale. "Harper, if she says anything." "She won't," I said, but my stomach churned. Mia wasn't cruel, but she talked and gossip spread fast. If word got out, Riley could lose her job. I could lose my spot on the team. Everything we worked for could come crashing down. "I need to talk to her," Riley said, already moving toward the locker room. "Stay here." "No," I said, grabbing her arm. "We do this together. I'm not letting you face this alone." She looked at me, her expression torn between fear and something like gratitude. "Okay," she said finally. "But we need to be careful." We found Mia in the locker room, sitting on a bench, her phone in her hands. She looked up, her face a mix of shock and guilt. "I'm not gonna say anything," she said quickly. "I swear. I didn't expect that." "Mia, please," Riley said, her voice steady but pleading. "This isn't what you think. It's complicated." Mia raised an eyebrow. "Complicated? Yeah, I bet. But Harper's my friend and I'm not a snitch. Just don't make me regret this, okay?" I nodded, my throat tight. "Thank you," I whispered. She shrugged, standing. "Don't thank me yet. People notice things, Harper. Be careful." She left and Riley and I stood there, the weight of her words settling over us. That night, Riley drove me to a quiet diner off campus, far from prying eyes. We sat in a corner booth, picking at fries, talking in low voices. She told me about her own coming out, years ago, how it cost her family but gave her freedom. I told her about Ohio, about the fear that had kept me silent for so long. It wasn't a date, not really, but it felt like the start of something fragile but real. "We can't be reckless," Riley said, her hand resting near mine on the table. "Not yet. But I don't want to lose this." "Me neither," I said, and for the first time, I felt like I was swimming toward something, not away from it. The diner's neon glow felt like a secret world, just for us, but reality was waiting outside. Riley and I were treading dangerous water, and Mia's warning echoed in my head. People notice things. We had to be careful, but every stolen glance, every brush of her hand, made me want to throw caution to the wind. The next few weeks were a balancing act. At practice, Riley was Coach Morgan, all sharp commands and focused eyes. I was just Harper, the freshman trying to keep her head above water. But in the quiet moments, after practice, in her office, or during late-night texts when I couldn't sleep, we were something else. Something unspoken but electric, growing stronger every day. I started to notice things about her I hadn't before. The way she chewed her lip when she was nervous. The way she laughed, low and warm, when I teased her about her terrible taste in music. We hadn't kissed, hadn't crossed that line, but the tension between us was a live wire, sparking with every look, every word. But the team was starting to talk. I caught whispers in the locker room, sideways glances during warm-ups. Mia kept her word, but others weren't so discreet. "You and Coach Morgan are tight, huh?" one teammate asked, her tone teasing but sharp. I brushed it off, but the unease settled in my bones. If rumors reached the athletic director, Riley could be fired. I could be kicked off the team. The stakes were higher than ever. One night, after a particularly brutal practice, Riley asked me to meet her at a park near campus. It was late, the air cool and heavy with the scent of eucalyptus. She was sitting on a bench by a small pond, her hoodie pulled up, looking more like a college student than a coach. I sat beside her, our knees brushing, and for a moment we just listened to the crickets. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not just about my job, about what this means for you. You're so young, Harper. You've got your whole career ahead of you. I'm not that young, I said, turning to face her. And I'm not fragile. I know what I want. Her eyes searched mine and I saw the battle there. Want versus duty, heart versus head. What do you want? She asked, her voice raw. You, I said simply, and the word felt like a confession, a release. I want you. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. Then slowly she leaned in, her lips brushing mine. It was soft, tentative, but it set my whole world on fire. I kissed her back, my hands finding her face, and for a moment nothing else mattered. Not the team, not the rules, not the risks. But the moment was fleeting. Headlights swept across the park, and we pulled apart, hearts racing. It was just a car passing by, but it was a reminder of how exposed we were. We can't do this here, Riley said, her voice shaky. Not like this. Then where? I asked, frustration bubbling up. When? I'm tired of hiding, Riley. I know, she said, her hand squeezing mine. I'm trying to figure this out. I just need time. Time. Felt like a luxury we didn't have. The next day, I overheard two teammates gossiping in the locker room. Harper's always with Coach Morgan, one said. It's weird, right? The other laughed, but it wasn't cruel, just curious. Still, it was enough to make my stomach churn. I told Riley that night, over a hurried phone call. We need to cool it, she said, her voice tight. At least in public. No more late-night talks at the pool. No more meetings off campus. Not until we know it's safe. I hated it, but I agreed. The distance hurt, but it was better than losing her entirely. We settled into a new routine. Strictly professional at practice, stolen moments over text or quick calls from my dorm. But the strain was wearing on us both. Riley looked exhausted, her eyes shadowed, her smiles rare. I was struggling too, my grades slipping, my focus fraying. Then came the bombshell. At practice one morning, the athletic director, Mr. Coleman, showed up unannounced. He was a stern man, all suits and clipped words, and his presence sent a chill through the team. He pulled Riley aside after practice, and I watched from the deck, my heart in my throat. When she came back, her face was pale. He knows something, she said, her voice low as we stood by the equipment room. Someone tipped him off about inappropriate behavior. He didn't name you, but Harper, this is bad. My stomach dropped. What do we do? I asked, panic rising. I don't know, she admitted, her eyes glassy. But I can't lose this job. And I won't let you lose your scholarship. We'll figure it out, I said, echoing her words from weeks ago. But even as I said it, I felt the ground shifting beneath us. The pool, once my sanctuary, now felt like a trap closing in. The air in Riley's office felt suffocating, like the walls were pressing in. Her words, he knows something, echoed in my head, each syllable a hammer against my chest. We were so careful but not careful enough, and now everything was at risk. Who could have said something? I asked, pacing the small space. My voice was sharp, edged with panic. Riley sat on the edge of her desk, her hands gripping the wood, her knuckles white. I don't know, she said, her eyes fixed on the floor. It could have been anyone. A teammate, a coach, even a janitor who saw us lingering too long. She looked up, her face drawn. Harper, if this gets out, it's not just my job. It's your future. Your scholarship. I don't care about the scholarship, I said, and I meant it. I care about you. She flinched like my words hurt. You should care, she said softly. You've worked too hard to throw it away. And I can't be the reason you lose everything. Her words stung, but they also lit a fire in me. You're not, I said, stepping closer. You're the reason I'm finally being honest with myself. You're the reason I'm not hiding anymore. For a moment, her eyes softened, and I thought she might reach for me. But then she stood, putting the desk between us. We need to stop this, she said, her voice breaking. No more texts, no more moments. We can't keep pretending this won't end badly. I felt like I'd been punched. You're giving up? I asked, my voice trembling. Just like that. I'm trying to protect you, she said, her eyes glassy. And myself. I'm sorry, Harper. I wanted to argue, to fight, but the look on her face stopped me. She wasn't just scared, she was breaking. I left her office without another word, my heart in shards. The next week was agony. Riley was a ghost, her presence at practice mechanical, her eyes never meeting mine. I swam like a machine, pushing through the pain, but it wasn't enough to drown out the hurt. My teammates noticed the change, but no one said anything. Even Mia kept her distance, her earlier warning now a grim prophecy. Then came the regional championships. It was the biggest meet of the season, a chance to qualify for nationals, and the pressure was crushing. I was slated for the 200-meter backstroke and the 400-meter freestyle, my strongest events, but my head wasn't in it. All I could think about was Riley standing on the sidelines, her clipboard a shield between us. The meet was a blur of noise and nerves. I placed second in the backstroke, a solid time but not enough to qualify. The freestyle was my last shot. As I stood on the block, goggles tight, I glanced at Riley. She was watching me, her expression unreadable, but for a split second our eyes locked. It was enough to ground me, to remind me why I was here. I dove in, the water swallowing me whole. Every stroke was a fight, every breath a choice. I poured everything into that race, my fear, my longing, my love for her. When I touched the wall, the crowd roared and the scoreboard flashed. First place, a qualifying time. I climbed out, breathless, searching for Riley. She was there, her smile small but real. "You did it," she said, her voice thick with pride. "I knew you could." For a moment it felt like old times, like we were just Harper and Riley, not coach and swimmer. But then Mr. Coleman appeared, his face stern, and the moment shattered. "Morgan, a word," he said, nodding toward the stands. Riley's smile vanished and she followed him, leaving me dripping and alone. I didn't see her again until after the meet, when I found her in the parking lot, leaning against her car. Her face was pale, her eyes red. "They're investigating," she said without preamble. "Someone filed a formal complaint. They're interviewing the team tomorrow." My heart stopped. "Who?" I demanded, but she shook her head. "Doesn't matter," she said. "They have enough to suspend me pending the investigation. I'm stepping back, Harper. For now." "No," I said, my voice breaking. "You can't. We'll fight this. We'll." "There's no we," she cut in, her voice sharp but trembling. "Not right now. I need you to focus on nationals, on your future. I'll handle this." I wanted to scream, to tell her I couldn't do this without her, but she was already getting into her car. "Take care of yourself, Harper," she said, and then she was gone, her taillights fading into the night. That night I sat in my dorm staring at my phone, her last text glowing on the screen. "I'm proud of you. Always." I cried until I couldn't anymore, until the hurt was just a dull ache. Riley was slipping away, and I didn't know how to hold on. Riley's absence was a hole I couldn't fill. The assistant coach took over, a gruff older man who didn't know my name half the time, and practice felt like going through the motions. I swam, I ate, I slept, but it was all mechanical, like I was a ghost in my own life. Nationals were 2 weeks away, and I was supposed to be preparing, but all I could think about was her. The team interviews came and went, a tense affair with whispered questions and nervous glances. Mia pulled me aside after hers, her face grim. "They asked about you and Riley," she said. "I didn't say anything, I swear. But someone did. They wouldn't tell me who." I nodded, my throat tight. I wanted to be angry, to hunt down whoever had betrayed us, but I was too tired. The fight was draining out of me, replaced by a quiet, aching resolve. If Riley was stepping back to protect me, I'd honor that by swimming my heart out. For her. For us. The days blurred together, a cycle of training and sleepless nights. I kept my phone close, hoping for a text, a call, anything. But Riley was silent, and the silence was louder than any whistle she'd ever blown. I started to wonder if I'd imagined it all, the connection, the kisses, the way she'd made me feel seen. But then I'd remember her eyes, her touch, and I knew it was real. It had to be. Nationals were in Arizona, a sprawling complex of pools and screaming fans. I arrived with the team, my bag heavy with gear and my heart heavier with loss. The 400-meter freestyle was my only event, my last chance to prove myself. I stood on the deck, the air thick with chlorine and anticipation, and for the first time I didn't look for Riley in the crowd. I couldn't afford to. The race was brutal, every lap a battle against my own limits. I thought of Riley with every stroke, her voice in my head. "You're enough." When I touched the wall, the scoreboard lit up. Second place, a new personal best. Not gold, but close enough to taste it. The crowd cheered, but it was hollow without her there. Back at the hotel, I checked my phone out of habit. There was a message from an unknown number. "You were incredible." I watched the stream. My heart leapt then sank. She was watching, but she wasn't here. I typed a reply, "I miss you," but deleted it. Instead I wrote, "Thank you. I swam for you." Her response came hours later. "I know. I'm sorry." I stared at those words until my eyes burned, then turned off my phone. I couldn't keep chasing her, not when she was pulling away. When I got back to campus, I heard the news. Riley had resigned. The investigation had cleared her of misconduct. There was no proof, just rumors, but she'd chosen to leave rather than fight. I found out from Mia, who looked at me with pity I hated. "She left a note for you," she said, handing me a folded piece of paper. I waited until I was alone in my dorm to open it. Her handwriting was messy, like she'd written it in a rush. "Harper, I'm sorry I couldn't stay. You're stronger than you know, and you don't need me to prove it. Live your truth. I'll always be cheering for you. Riley." I cried then, for her, for us, for the future we might have had. But as the tears dried, something else took root. A quiet strength, a clarity I hadn't had before. Riley had seen me, had helped me see myself, and that was a gift I'd carry forever. I kept swimming, kept fighting for my scholarship, my dreams. I came out to Mia, then to the team, and though it wasn't easy, it was honest. I was done hiding. Months later, I heard Riley had taken a coaching job in Oregon, far from coastal state. I didn't reach out, but I hoped she was happy, that she'd found her own truth. The pool became my sanctuary again, a place to heal, to grow. Every stroke was a reminder of what I'd learned. Love wasn't just about holding on. It was about letting go, about trusting yourself to swim through the pain. Riley had changed me, not just as a swimmer but as a person. And as I dove into the water day after day, I carried her with me, a quiet current in my heart, pushing me forward.